Okay, what we're going to go over is James Q. Wilson's 4 kinds of politics. And when we think about politics, there's a lot of definitions you could find. If you were to Google politics, you'd find quite a variety. But I like to think of politics as the debate over who gets what, and how much of it they get, who pays for it. So it almost comes down to an economics. And if we're going to think about it, who gets what, we need to know what kinds of policies the government is going to deliver, and how will they be paid for it, and then who will be the recipients, and how will all that be worked out. So what we're going to do is, if you'll with me, make a box, and we're going to create sort of a little schematic as we've done in the past, looking at cost and benefit. Put cost down here as the x-axis, and then benefits. So any program, any policy is going to benefit some or all, and it's going to cost some or all, and that's really what we're looking at. So when we think of costs, we could say that the costs are distributed, meaning everybody pays that, or the cost could be concentrated, meaning one group is going to pay for this policy. And you could do the same thing we're going to do with benefits. So here we have concentrated benefits, meaning one group is going to benefit, or distributed, everybody will benefit. Okay. So broadly speaking, you could categorize most of politics in these 4. Of course, with any categorization, there's going to be some gray. Things might fall kind of between 2, and there will be some debate. Part of the biggest issue with looking at policies is when we think about cost-benefit analysis, so much of it depends on our perception. So let's write that there to remind it's the perceived cost and the perceived benefit. So in this quadrant right up here, this would be policies that would benefit all and are paid for by all fall here. So this is called majoritarian politics. A very obvious one would be national security. We all pay taxes, and national security, protecting our borders, keeping us safe, is something that we all benefit from. Because this affects all and everybody pays for it, this is often what's in the news the most. It's the most widely seen, full of the most discourse in our politics. So it's widely seen or widely publicized and discussed. Education. We want our youth to develop, acquire the skills they need to be contributing citizens and contributing in the workforce. We all pay for education. So that's one of those policies that affects everybody, and everybody pays for it through their taxes. When we are in this quadrant and there is a debate, usually the debate comes down to cost. Because everyone's paying for it, there can be quite a debate over the actual cost of this program. And there can be an ideological debate. Meaning, if everyone's going to pay for this and everyone's going to get it, then we come down to one of those fundamental questions about the role of government. Should government even be doing this thing that will be costly and benefiting all? So we would put healthcare largely in this quadrant. Okay, now let's go to the other side where it's concentrated. I know you're going to be thinking, well, that makes sense. One group is going to benefit, they should pay for it. But we're not talking about one group, we're talking about 2 groups. Okay, and this would be interest group politics. So interest group politics means one group pays and another one benefits. Another group benefits. Now, because interest group politics comes down to a discourse between 2 factions, as Madison would call it, even if the resulting policy affects everybody, because the interests at play were largely separate from the majority, this is not widely publicized or discussed. It's often out of view. So an example here might be thinking about seatbelt laws that were passed. Not all cars have always had seatbelts. It's something that is now required by law. But how did that law come to be? You really had two interest groups that were really active in it. Now you might be thinking, well, then that affects everybody. It should be up in this quadrant. While the policy affects everyone, it wasn't necessarily something where everyone, the consumers, got actively involved, but rather the insurance lobby pushing for seatbelts and car manufacturers resisting that because that would increase their costs. So those two interest groups, the insurance lobby and car manufacturing lobbies, competed with one another in order to get legislation, policy that would affect both of their interests. All right, slide over here. So this is everybody pays, one group benefits. We've actually already talked a lot about politics down here. This is rather common. Some of it has to do with, if you recall, the efficacy of groups based on their size. And we've talked in the past about the free rider problem and how small groups can be well organized, well formed, and they persevere, whereas large groups, particularly consumer groups, are busy, get distracted, and not as well organized. This area is called clientele or client politics. So any type of subsidy. We did an activity looking at the wool and mohair industries and how they pushed for federal government subsidies. Again, the federal government gets its money from income taxes, and then those industries are getting some sort of financial benefit. We've seen this really with pork barrel legislation. So when a congressman gets federal money just for his or her district or state, then that district or state is essentially a client of the government. So essentially the interest group that we're talking about is a client of the government, and we all pay for it. And over here in this quadrant is the least likely of all entrepreneurial politics. So this would be everybody benefiting and one small group paying for it. So knowing that small groups are well organized and effective at guarding their interests, this is the most difficult. And the best example would be almost any environmental policy. Because we will all benefit as a society, as a world, from clean air, clean water, preserving our resources. While everyone would benefit, it's largely business and industry that would have to make the sacrifices in order to have effective environmental policy. This quadrant of politics really takes off only when you have a charismatic individual. Someone who can essentially mobilize the large group that is going to be benefiting from it, mobilizing them to guard their important interests against the probably well-organized small group that is trying to not have to pay for this policy. Okay, so what you're going to do now is practice. I have a handout. Did have a handout. And that handout will be uploaded, so I don't have it. Oh, here it is. Okay, so what you're going to do is see if you can place these types of politics in a category, and then I'll have the answer key posted as well.